Hello, everyone. This is Dolores Cannon again with the Metaphysical Hour. Of course, you never know if it's live or if it's Memorex, as they used to say. But
we be live tonight.
We're live tonight. I don't know how much help that is to them, because when they play the tapes, we say on there we're live too.
So don't say you're live.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. That's a book that we're just now publishing. It's called Live from the Other Side.
Live.
So it's interesting. We're talking about that. Okay. Well, we didn't go out of the state this time, but we did have our class last week here in Fayetteville, Arkansas. And that's the last one in the States for this year.
But not the last.
We'll be headed overseas, and we're going to be doing lots of trips in other countries and lots of classes there. And I'll be talking, maybe I should mention that tonight.
Yeah.
Right now while I'm thinking about it. But in the 29th, we'll be having one more show next Friday.
Right.
And then we head out across the big pond. We're going to England again, to London, and to France. So we're going to do 2 classes over there if anyone is interested. And, if you can look on our website, you'll get more information. But the first class is we're going to first do a lecture. It's going to be August the 31st at the Waldorf Hilton Hotel in London. The Waldorf Hilton Hotel in London. Says Alwick. I guess that's just an area of London.
Right. Yeah, it's in London.
That's Tuesday, August the 31st. We'll be doing the lecture. Then we go to Oxfordshire, which they say is not very far away. Mm-hmm. We'll be doing our class there. And that's going to be September the 3rd to the 5th. So that'll be interesting. Anybody who's interested in the England class, you can still have time to get in.
Well, in the France class, what are those dates? You don't have those on here. It's the following weekend is the France class.
Yeah, I'm going to say that next.
So, okay. Mm-hmm.
But if you're interested in the England one, and we've sent out emails to all of our email lists all over Europe, because they said over there, they're not that far away, and they can just fly over real easily.
Right.
So we're having the first one in the London area. That's the end of August and the 1st of September. Then we're going to take the Channel, go underneath the Channel, and end up in Paris and be headed down to the south of France. Mm-hmm. That's where we're going to do our class in France, and that's going to be the next weekend. I think it's the 12th to 15th.
Well, it'd be the 10th. It'd be the 10th to the 12th.
Okay, so that's when it's going to be.
Later. Mm-hmm.
In the south of France. And they said where we're going to be is like a center that is out kind of in the middle of nowhere, but it's 20 minutes from Avignon. So that is in the south of France. And that area I've always been fascinated by because, with my work with Nostradamus and the 3 books I wrote about him, that is Nostradamus territory down there. I've always wanted to see that and see what it looks like. So we're going to try very hard to work that in when we're there, is to take a little side trip and go over to see the Nostradamus Museum and the house where he lived. So that ought to be fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if we get back from that trip, we should have a lot to talk about.
Right. And didn't you say there was another place in that area, too, that you wanted to see?
Yeah, the one that's Sainte Marie de la Mar. That is further to the south, but it's still all in the same general area. And anyone who's read my books on Jesus and the Essenes, I speak about Sainte Marie de la Mar because after the crucifixion of Jesus, they put all their survivors, like I guess you would say, all of the disciples, Lazarus, Mary Magdalene, and Mary the mother of Jesus. They had about 100 people, all of the main characters after the crucifixion. They said they couldn't kill them, but they decided to do it a different way. They put them all on a ship that didn't have any oars or any sails, and they just set it loose into the Mediterranean. And they thought that would be a good way to kill them. They wouldn't have to do it, because how could they possibly survive out in the Mediterranean Sea with no sails or no oars. So the miracle of that whole thing is that they came ashore on the coast of France, and it was at Sainte Marie de la Mar. So there is I know there's supposed to be some kind of a monument there, and when I've done regressions into past lives, we've done that when they've gone into the lives of the gypsies, that was like a special place for the gypsies. They would go there, and they said there was a grotto there, and they would hold their weddings and their different ceremonies there back in the 1700s. And now what was a grotto in those days is probably a church there now, because there were supposed to be statues representing the Marys, the ones that came and landed there. And the way the story goes, it's all in the book of Jesus and the Essenes. After they landed there, they were given another boat that was much more seaworthy, and they headed out again, and then they ended up in England. And that was where the first churches were formed in Glastonbury, in that area. And it is said that, I believe it was Mary Magdalene that went back to France, and she started a church there.
Okay.
And Lazarus started one in Spain. These are all unknown facts about the early church, and I think these are miracles that really should have been included in the Bible, and they should be talked about in the church, but they aren't. They're just forgotten about, because the very first church was in Glastonbury, and the abbot that lives there, they have an abbey right there, and they know this, and they talk about it. They have a church there. It's supposed to be, well, the one is where they have the well, the Chalice Well, and that's supposed to be where all this took place. The original church burned many, many years ago, but they said this was the very first church in the world. Was they didn't call it a church. They called the religion the Way in those days. It was not the Christian religion as we know it today, but it was founded by the followers of Jesus. And they said that place at Glastonbury is the holiest place in the world because the remaining disciples were buried there. And John, the disciple, lived to be 100 years old, and he's buried there. And Mary, the mother of Jesus, is buried there. So they said that is the holiest places in the world. So I've been to Glastonbury, but I did want to go and see Sainte Marie de la Mar because of the stories and the history we've heard of that. And I believe it is considered a sacred place there. They probably know the story.
Well, probably. It sounds like we have to go there then. I mean, you're that close, we have to go.
I would just like to see it and see if there's any statues or church or monuments about it. Before I forget, let me give out the toll-free number in case anyone wants to call in tonight, because we're just going to be talking about several different subjects. If anyone wants to jump in, that's perfectly okay. But the toll-free number is 1-888-815-9756, 888-815-9756. But, a lot of people think that the first Christian church was in Rome, and it really wasn't. That wasn't founded till over 200 years after the crucifixion. That's a long time.
Right.
And the Vatican is not the first original church in Italy either, in Rome. The original church was founded as a refuge for those who were escaping the persecution of the early Christians. And it's down the street a ways from the Vatican. They say there's a little sign, if you look for it, that will point you toward the first church ever in Rome. There's so many things we don't know. We just know what have been publicized, but we don't really know the real truth of what happened, and I think that's the most fascinating thing. Because they said it was into the, I believe, 1400s, there was an argument with the Vatican over which church was the first one in the world. And they never did say it was the Vatican or it was Rome. There was an argument. Was it the one in England or was it the one in France? They knew they were the first ones. And so it was finally decided that the one in England is the oldest and the one in France with Mary Magdalene did come a little bit later. So these are fascinating facts.
Right.
So I've done a lot of studying on this, and this is in the book Jesus and the Essenes. So anyway, I just thought I'd bring that in. If we're going to be in the area, and it's not going to be that far, just a few hours, I think I'd really like to go and...
Oh, we'll be there. We'll go. It's not a try or I'd like. We're just going to do it.
We're going to do it, okay. So. Because I do want to see Nostradamus' house, because in the 3 books I wrote about him, we had so much information about his house, and it was always described the same. So I would like to see it for real.
Right.
People who have been there said it's not the same because it is a museum, and they really didn't get a feel that he was there anymore. He's supposed to be buried somewhere around there, too. So it ought to be interesting.
He might come out of the woodwork for you, though. Maybe get a picture of you in front of the house, and he'd be standing there with you.
That'd be interesting. We never know. We did 3 years of working with him consistently, so who's to say what might happen if we go...
He knows your energy.
If we go into that area, who's to say what's going to happen?
That's right.
So anyway, this is the first time to go into the south of France, so we're going to see what's going to happen there. We'll have a lot of interesting things to report when we get back. Okay. This might be a good point to bring up right here before we go into some of the other subjects. We've had some very interesting past lives have come up in our demonstrations in the last couple of classes. Because at all of my classes, after I share with people and teach them how to do my technique and how to do the healing and the finding all the answers, on the last day we always pick someone from the class and we do a demonstration to show them how it is done. And one of these just so happened that during her past life regression, she went back to France.
Right.
I guess that's why I'm thinking about that whole scenario. And she was one of the female disciples who left Jerusalem after the crucifixion.
Right.
And a lot of you out there probably don't know there were women disciples. I've written about them, and in my book, Jesus and the Essenes, and also we have published 2 other books by an author in England, Stuart Wilson, and Joanna Prentice is the hypnotist that came forth with that information. And the book, The Essenes, Children of the Light, follows on, continuing from my book about Jesus and the Essenes, and gave us a lot more information. And then they wrote the book called The Power of the Magdala, and that is the story of Mary Magdalene and her part with the women disciples. Because Jesus had more women followers than he had men, because it's more natural for the women. They have this intuitive ability and instinctive ability. They can grasp these things better than men. I'm sorry, guys, but that's just the way it is.
Well, it's no slap against the guys, because we women were guys before, too. It's all,
we're all
at
the
those
same.
times, the men now may have been the women then. So, see, it's not... you're really probably slapping the women right now. So.
But I'm saying, by saying that the men are not as intuitive as the women are.
I think they are now. They're more intuitive now.
Maybe we're going along to that now.
Well, they're more balanced. People are coming into both their feminine and masculine.
Okay.
So.
But in those days, they had 12 women disciples, just like there were 12 men disciples. So Mary Magdalene was the one who was in charge of the women disciples. And in that book, Power of the Magdala, they talk about all of the ones, they give their names, and after the crucifixion, many of them escaped.
Right.
They had to go and hide. A lot of them, all of them went into hiding, all the followers. So that group went to France, which is not natural, because now we know Mary Magdalene went there with the survivors, and she started her church there. So what could be more natural than to have the women disciples follow her?
Right.
So in this regression, the woman all of a sudden goes back to where she is one of the women disciples, and they had just arrived in France. Now, this woman has never read my books or Stuart's books, so she'd never heard of the idea of women disciples. But she gave a very interesting account of it. and how they had to stay in hiding, just cloistered like you would today in a convent. And they had brought a great deal of secret information with them and secret knowledge, and they tried to save as much as they could. And I've had that in many other regressions, too, where they're always trying to save the secret knowledge. So before they died, they all began dying off, and they couldn't get any more to join. Before they died, they hid a lot of the secret information. It's supposed to be there in France somewhere.
Right, in different places.
Who's to say if it's still there or not? Because a lot of these things would have been discovered over the years. We know that the Masons and the different groups were looking for things like that. And a lot of it probably was found. The Vatican later was trying to find as much as they could secret books and secret knowledge, but they wanted to hide it away in the Vatican, in the library. So a lot of it may have already been discovered. It's been so many thousands of years. But still, that's the kind of regressions I like, because you got all this information. I'm always looking for hidden knowledge and lost knowledge.
Right.
So that was interesting that she came up with that on her own. But that's what we usually do when we're doing these kind of sessions. We never know what's going to come out when we're doing the demo. And the one we just did, we had a demo. She went to a different time period.
I'm trying to remember what that was.
She went back to where she was one of the Jews in Germany.
That's right.
And
yeah, that was sad.
It was a sad one, because she thought she was safe because she was trusting a German officer, and that he was keeping her safe.
Protecting her.
Of course, there were probably sexual favors involved and all of that, but she said she didn't love him, but at least he was trying to keep her safe. But it ended up he turned her in, and so the Germans took her away, and they were all put on the train and taken to the death camps. And the regression ended where she was with the gas chambers. And I've had other people who have also gone to when they died at the gas chambers. So that was sad. But it was interesting that it turned out that the German officer who betrayed her is their husband now.
Her ex-husband now.
Well, yeah, they just got divorced. She stayed with him, 30-something years, she said. She stayed in there as long as she could, and then it's like the contract is over. You don't have to do it anymore. But I've told you before that we do change roles. We switch roles around, and we come back from reasons of karma. We come back into the life with the same people. Just different costumes, different parts that we're playing in this illusion that we're in.
For the different experiences.
Yeah. But that was interesting that she went back to that lifetime. So this is the kind of things I get when I'm working in my sessions, but it's interesting when you can do it where the whole class can watch.
Right.
And especially when you have the healings that occur, too.
Right.
Because the woman went to where she was one of the female disciples, was born with a curvature of the spine, and it caused back problems, hip problems, all kinds of problems. Well, they healed it. You know what I mean by they? The ones I work with, they healed it, and it was really wonderful to watch.
Right. Yeah, it was. It was great.
The class said it was the most mind-blowing thing they'd ever seen.
Yeah, they say it's one thing, you read all this in the books, and then in the class you actually get to hear sample sessions, but then when you actually see it, I mean, that's totally different, and watch it happen. It's just wild.
And I never know what's going to happen.
No.
But when it was over with, she knelt on the floor, and she said she hadn't been able to do that in years without a lot of pain. And she used to do yoga exercises when she was younger. She hadn't been able to do any of that. But she knelt on the floor, and she said there was no pain at all. That's the kind of thing I like.
Right. Yep.
And I had a woman just a few months ago that came in there with crutches, and I said it was so funny. She couldn't even go to the restroom or anything without the crutches. I had to help her. And she had a driver who had driven her there was going to take her back. And after the session, she got up and go to the restroom. She didn't just no problem at all. She just went by herself, and then we went into the front part to have the discussion. She forgot all about the crutches. They were sitting in the corner. And when we're ready to leave, after we'd had the discussion, she gets in the car, and the driver didn't have to help her in. She just gets in, and they're ready to go. And I said, we forgot the crutches. So we went back and got them, and I took them out to the car, and I said, well, I don't think you're going to need these anymore, but you might want to keep them as a souvenir.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the things she was told was to start a healing center.
Mm-hmm.
I said, that would be good to hang it on the wall and say, this is where I just came from. That's what happened before.
That's right.
And I don't remember off the top of my head the reasons for all these things, but that's what we do. We track down, why did this happen? Because everyone makes yourself sick. It's nothing but accident.
Right. Well,
so,
the sickness is a message.
Yeah.
Because you're not moving in the direction that you wanted yourself to move, and so this is a way of you delivering yourself a message to get on track, to get yourself in gear. And so it's a message being delivered. It's just we forgot to give ourselves the manual of interpretation. And so that's where we don't know how to interpret them, and so it moves on and moves on and moves on because we don't listen, and it goes into a disease process.
It goes into something that's very serious because we're not paying attention.
Right. So that's your job, and I will help with that job with the interpretation manual. That's what we're doing, is helping people understand the messages. Because
you should never be sick at all. No aches, pains, or anything. The human body is a miraculous machine that has been created to heal itself and take care of itself if we don't interfere. And this means the doctor's putting everybody on drugs, and that just covers everything up. And it's not really helping at all.
Well, of course not.
Because we're just putting the Band-Aid on something.
Of course it doesn't help. You're not getting the message. As long as you don't get the message, nothing happens. It just gets worse. So you've got to understand the message, and then it will go away.
That's what I tell people. You make yourself sick.
It will go away when you understand the message and you take heed of the message.
Yes. You have to act on it.
Yes. If it's telling you to go a different direction, okay, I got the message, but you don't move, well, it still won't happen.
It'll come back.
You have to do whatever it was you set in motion for yourself to do.
But you make yourself sick, and I know a lot of people tell me, what do you mean? I don't want to be sick. I didn't do this to myself. But if your mind is powerful enough to make yourself sick, it's also powerful enough to heal you. Once we just find out, why did I do this? What was it all about? What was the reason for it?
Right.
And I've got several different things along that line I was going to cover. If it's, I don't know what else we're supposed to talk about tonight. We have several different topics.
We're just ad-libbing here. So.
Yeah, okay. But one thing I thought was interesting was 2 cases I just did, and these were 2 sisters that came all the way from Ireland, and they come from all over the world. They come everywhere here to have sessions. I don't encourage people coming that far. But they come with all kinds of reasons, all kinds of things they're looking for. And I think if they're motivated to come that far, I think that's the first step of helping, because they really want to be helped if they're going to come so far.
Right.
But the reason I want to bring this up, and I'm not naming any names or anything, Julie's kind of shaking her head at me.
You've already given too much information.
Well, there's a lot of people in those countries. Anyway, I think the most important thing about this deals with genetic diseases, because the doctors are always saying...
No such thing, people.
Yeah, they're always saying, you have a defective gene, and that gene will create a disease, and it's supposed to be hereditary and follow down through generations.
Propensity, da-da-da-da-da-da. It always comes to you. You chose that.
Yeah.
You did not have to take that on. It may have been sitting there as a possibility, and you chose to take it. That's all that is. that's it.
And that's what I found. They've said many times, just because the gene is there, the defective gene is there that could possibly create this disease, like the doctors say, it doesn't mean it has to happen.
No, you don't have to take it.
You
chose it for the reason to give yourself the message.
Yeah, it's always the person, and do they choose to go that route?
Right, exactly.
It's there, it would be an easy route to do.
Exactly, just like there's all kinds of other things out there that we could grab onto at any moment.
Yeah.
Anyone you wanted, it's all there. I mean, if you really want to get obsessed about all the germs and all the things out there, you could, but because it's that way. You could grab any of those things.
Well, they say that everyone has the cancer germs in their body. They have all of this. It's just a matter of whether it's going to be activated at any given time.
And that depends on you.
Yeah, because we found that the cancer is caused by the suppressed anger.
Right.
A lot of this stuff is caused by suppressed anger, by stress. Well, I'm not going to go into what the disease is that these were, but it was supposed to be genetic, and the mother had died of it, and she died horribly with it. So naturally, the daughters are terrified.
Sure.
Because the doctors are telling them 50% chance you're going to get it. And
what's the other law? Law of attraction. Whatever you fear, you bring toward you.
Yeah.
So there.
Because they had to be the caretaker for the mother. They saw what happened, and all they could think about, well, according to the doctors, this is going to happen to me. And I can pass it on to my children because it's in the genes and it's hereditary. So it's a shame what people put themselves through, but these girls didn't know anything about metaphysics.
Right.
They came on faith alone, and I had to spend a lot of time explaining reincarnation and explaining a lot of these things because they had never thought of these alternative ideas, and that makes a big difference.
Yeah, but look how empowered they were when just knowing that you chose it, just knowing that's empowering to me. It's empowering. Some people are like, well, that's crazy. Well, it's empowering because if you chose that, then you can choose something else. If I chose that, I can unchoose it or I can choose something else.
Yeah.
It's totally empowering. It puts it all right back in your hands, in control. So.
But the one sister the doctors were saying she was already developing the symptoms. So naturally, she's terrified.
Sure.
And the symptoms she was developing, I didn't think they were that bad. They could be something anybody could go through. And if you didn't know about this gene lurking in the shadows, you wouldn't even think anything about it. You just go on living your life.
Right.
But instead, having the doctors say that, then they're looking for every little tiny clue.
Right.
And every time she goes back to the doctor, they say, well, these are the first symptoms. That means it's coming. And I wouldn't like that. Would they say the monster in the attic or something? You're waiting for it to pounce?
Yeah, let's just create a lot of fear here.
Oh, it's a lot of fear. And that was, but
see, they presented that to themselves to grow through.
Yes.
For that very reason. They wanted, that's what this time's about right now. A lot of it is to present a lot of fear, because that's one of the things we really have to move through and understand and not let it paralyze us. You got to know, you got to recognize it and know it for what it is. It's an illusion itself, and it creates its own little personalities and beings and everything, but it's an illusion. And
it draws, the very thing you're afraid of will be drawn to you.
Right.
Because fear is the strongest emotion a human has. If you're afraid of something, naturally you're going to focus on it, you're going to give it energy. Right. You give it energy and it gives it life.
Right. And that's why there's a lot of stuff going on right now that could be fear-producing. It looks scary because this is us presenting these things to ourselves so that we will recognize it and move through it and just say, okay, no, I know what that is. Go away. It's not for me.
Yeah.
It's not my life. So.
But I had to really do a lot of work with them because we had to get away from the fear and away from the fear the doctors were creating, too.
Yeah.
Is that this is going to happen, and they kept saying there's no cure for it. And imagine how awful that would be to have people in that mindset. But we were able to help them a great deal. That was the important thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
After the session, they said they felt such peace and calmness and such freedom, as though they were finally released from it all.
Good.
Because they realized they didn't have to create this. They didn't have to do it.
Right.
And we went through the mother, her problems in her life, and showing them that was why the mother chose to create it too.
Right.
But, of course, it was too late, and they weren't thinking of in that way in those days. But it's not too late for the two sisters, because now they can realize, I don't have to experience this. Just because they say it's genetic and I have to get it, it's up to you. You don't have to believe that.
Right.
Because I had a woman just a few months ago who told me when she came in, the doctors say I have 3 months to live. That according to that timeline, she said, I've got about 6 weeks left. And I said, well, what do you think? And she said, I don't think so. I don't believe it.
Right.
That's the first step.
We have to operate from our heart. Our heart knows. Our heart, you've got to be your own truth bearer, truth, whatever. And you've got to have your discerning. I was going to say your discerning hat, but it actually comes from the heart. Your discernment factor is in the heart. So your heart knows. It knows the truth. And if that doesn't feel right, don't go with it. Don't listen. That's not your truth. That may be that doctor's truth or that other person's truth. That's not your truth.
And they're just going by the book, by what they've been taught in medical school. That's all they know is just what they've been taught. It doesn't mean it has to happen. They've told me many times that they know they don't heal anyone. The person heals themselves.
Right. Yeah, they can. They're a help. I mean, doctors have their place. They absolutely do. You know, but it's just always with anybody, with us, anybody telling you stuff, put your discernment factor in there, and you take your own truth out of it. What's right for you. Don't ever believe somebody just because of who they are. You have to make your own decisions for you.
Ask lots and lots of questions. Research it out, and if it doesn't make sense, then make up your own mind.
Right.
Create your own truth. But that's what happens when I get them and they say, the doctors say I'm going to die. And I say, what do you think? And they'll say, I'm not ready to go yet. Right. Yeah. I've got things I've got to do. You could just as easily give up because they said it's going to happen. But Deb had that joke about the doctors keep the patient entertained while the body heals itself, which is a good thing to say because that's exactly what happens. They say a lot of times they know they didn't have anything to do with it. The body was taking care of itself.
Well, the body can. It knows how to do it. If you don't mess with it too much, it knows how to do it.
And when we were doing the Awakening tour, and Tabash was saying all these things, one of the things he brought up was how the body can heal itself and take care of itself.
Right.
But he said if you go taking all these drugs, then the body says, okay, you don't need me. You don't need that part.
Yeah, you've got that over there to do it. So.
And you're depending on that crutch there. It says, all right, we'll just turn it off then. If you don't feel you want us to heal the body, we'll just...
Or us to take care of that or whatever, because it can.
Yeah, it can, but if you just decide, okay, I'm going to fill it full of all these drugs, which really kind of deaden the whole process, well, then it's going to shut things down.
Right.
Because they have said every drug has a side effect. And sometimes the side effects are worse than the disease itself.
Or it creates the disease that it's supposed to be trying to...
Whatever it's trying to get rid of, sometimes it can create it. So there's a lot of strange things about all this, and they definitely don't have all the answers. That's why you got to trust your own body. It knows what it's doing, and it can take care of you.
Trust your body and love your body. This is something I've recently been going through, and I didn't realize how I felt. I mean, I wasn't happy with my body, but I thought, that's okay. I mean, it's here, it's doing its job, da-da-da-da-da, and I was like, I had this little disconnect and everything. And I kept reading in things that says, love your body, love your body, love your body. Well, somewhere along the line, I started working out, I started training. And I started developing...
Because you were overweight.
Yeah, and I started developing a strength. And I highly recommend this for anybody. do strength training. It empowers you. It gives you. It makes you. It makes you feel strong. It makes you feel good. But what it also did is it connected me to my body. It gave me an appreciation for my body. And with all of that, somewhere in that whole process, I have started loving my body. I'm loving myself, and in that, the weight's coming off. And it's because that's how the body works in synchronicity. But if you've got to love yourself, you've got to love it and appreciate it. Well, it's hard to do that when you have a disconnect, and you don't. And I didn't realize how much of one I had until I started. But you've got to get in touch. And I think that's something else I'm reading is. This is a time right now where we do need to be in touch with our bodies because we're taking our bodies through stuff. And so it's good to be in touch with our bodies.
Mm-hmm. And the changes in the vibration and the frequencies are definitely affecting our body.
Right.
And there's a lot of them out there who don't understand what's really happening.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So they are fighting it. They're having a problem with it.
And they hate themselves, and they do all that. Well, how can you work in synchronicity with something if you hate it?
Yeah.
It's got to be a love affair, and it's not hard because this is this is your housing, so it's not hard to do, but you've got to understand it. And like I said, when I saw the strength, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm strong. And it also develops something else. It builds a strength, a mental strength to it. It starts going, I can do anything. You start getting this, that's what I'm saying, it empowers you. It's just a strength. And I didn't realize that. I mean, I was doing walking and all that stuff, but there's something about strength training, and you see what your body can do. It does things you never thought it could do. And that's when you start going, well, if it can do that, well, maybe I can do that. You start realizing I don't have limitations. So, see, it starts taking you to other places metaphysically that you wouldn't think. You almost think like, well, the body isn't important. I have to be up here. This is what's important. All
up
my
in the
astral areas and all my higher level learning, and my body can't get me there. It will. You strengthen your body. You see how strong you can be, and you start going, I can do this. I can do things I didn't know I could do. That takes you to another level. It starts releasing limitations, and now I can do anything. The body can, and something about that goes into the brain and says, I can. I can do anything. Well, that's all this up here,
Well,
so
they always said, it's even in the Bible, the body is the temple.
Absolutely.
And why would you ever want to harm or damage your temple?
Right. You
want to keep it as healthy as you can.
Absolutely.
The best shape you can. Oh, somebody in our class asked a funny question, and I thought, where in the world did they come up with something like that?
Yeah.
She said, we talk about the subconscious, the higher self that I work with, said, does the higher self ever say, it's okay to smoke? And I said, definitely not. I said, they would never tell you to do something that they know is going to harm the body.
They would never tell you to put toxins in your body.
Yeah, they always want to get the toxins out.
Right.
And they always say, you should see what it looks like from in here.
Right. I have seen what it looks like from in there. It's yuck. in some of these bodies. So, it's yucky.
So I said, where would she ever get the idea that it's okay, you can go ahead and smoke and do all those things, unless she was trying to find an excuse for herself?
Possibly. I mean, there was some ulterior thing there, thinking, well, there might be some times that it's okay. But toxins in the body are not okay.
No.
So.
And we want to get them out of there as much easy as we can, because this is what affects a lot of the major organs. So this is important once you start realizing all of this.
I had a question. This occurred to me in one of the last two classes. It just kind of came in, and I'm not even sure if I'm going to be able to ask it correctly because it's one of those mind-bending things. But it's
that we're not used to.
No, we don't do things like that. But it came in. It's like, okay, we go to these past lives, and you see all these past things and stuff like that. And it was just a flashing thought was, did any of these past I mean, are we the first generation, or are we the first ones that are probing into all this past stuff and trying to answer all this stuff and trying to sort all this stuff out for ourselves to grow and to da-da-da, you know what I'm saying? Now, I know it's in the Bible or in the Jesus times they were doing things, so I remember that. But it's like, you know, all these people going back to past lives, do they ever think about, or do you ever get that sensation from them that they're thinking about why they're doing this and how this relates to this and what this has to do with, see, like how we do now. Well, I wonder if this is karmic because of this happened over here.
You mean in the other lives?
Yeah. And it's like, did they, in those other lives, did they do that?
I don't think so, because 90% of the ones I do were very simple, ordinary lives where all they did was try to live one day to the next.
Right, and it could be just the time. Those times we weren't developed to that stage yet.
Yeah,
now we are, you know. So.
There were the mystery schools, the secret schools of knowledge. They were trained.
Right. They were looking.
They were trained to look into things and to know there was more and to know the different procedures, rituals, and things to advance their minds.
Now, has stuff like that always been going on all along?
Yeah,
okay.
Those were always the secret schools,
right,
the ones everybody was always trying to destroy and kill people. But the average man on the street or in the market or in the field didn't have time. He didn't know about any of it.
Right,
so
like today. I mean, the average person doesn't.
But, there's always been those who have wanted to know more and wanted to find the answers and put it all together. And but then another life they may go back to being a farmer in the field. It just depends what the lesson.
But, you know, even your everyday person here, it's always like, why am I here? Do you hear them saying that in these other simple everyday life? Do they say, why am I here? What am I doing? What am I,
I don't think so, but maybe they did in these secret schools.
Right, but I'm saying the average person in the field, you know, the big and potato lives, did they wonder why they were there?
No, they just wanted to have as good a life as they can. They grieved when someone died.
They were just living.
They were just living their lives. That's all it was. But in all of those lives, there was always something that related to the person I was working with now, the client, even if it was something very simple. In fact, in one of the classes we just did, this one man, we taught a demo, and he said there was one lesson the person learned from the lifetime. And he said, you mean that whole lifetime and they only learned one thing?
Well, that was how the time worked. Our time is so different now. We like you early on, you were getting that we were living 10 lives in one lifetime. Now, that was 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Imagine what it's like now. It's even more probably than 10.
Because they said we had so much karma to repay that it would take you 10 lifetimes. So now we're doing it all in one. So a lot of we're learning probably a lot of lessons in one lifetime. We're living longer too. We have more time to work it out.
Right. Well, we're just a lot more complicated now.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we're becoming more aware of our multidimensionality. I mean, we know all these things that we're doing. I mean, we may not be able to see them yet, but we're starting to think about it and grasp the ideas of them.
There's always been people down through history that had the knowledge and tried to pass it on to others, and they were always trying to be stopped by the powers that be, the religious organizations or whatever. Okay. There's something I want to bring up that just was on the Today Show today. And I'm going to bring it up before we run out of time here.
I can't believe how the time just went by. Speaking of time.
Oh, yeah, time when we get to going, time just passes so quickly. But if you remember, I'm lecturing a lot on this now. Everywhere I go, it's a big thing. We keep talking about the New Earth and about the 3 waves of volunteers who have come in since the end of World War II, and how they've all come in to help with the Earth, to help the people to ascend. And they've come from many other places, and they're all here for different reasons. And the 3 waves were the first wave. I don't want to go into a lot of detail on this tonight. I do it a lot in my lectures, and I've talked about it on here before. The first one was the ones that were right after World War II, we called the baby boomers. And they would be in the 50s, 60s, early 60s right now. Then the second group after that would be 20s, 30s, about that age. Anyway, the last group, the third wave, is the new children. They're the ones that have been coming in. Some of these are getting up there into puberty now because they're growing older. But these new children are the ones that we're more concerned about, And our company has even published a book about them. We call like the care and feeding of the new children.
Right.
And it's for the parents and the teachers to know how to deal with these new groups.
As well as the kids themselves, so that it helps, it gives them support, too. So.
Yeah, we've had Nikki Patello, the author, on our show, and so they can understand
right.
it. The book is Children of the Stars,
right.
And it talks about this new group. And we know that this group is been the one that is, I don't want to say mistreated by the schools or the medical profession or whatever. Misunderstood, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Because these new kids, they thought there was something strange about them and different, and they diagnosed so many of them with ADHD, attention deficit disorders. And so they began putting a lot of them on Ritalin. And they kind of separated them from the rest. You've got to do these things to make them normal. They were disruptive and all of that. So they put them on these drugs.
Right.
And in my work, it said time and time again, don't put them on the drugs. One thing that happens is you lower that frequency, that vibration of their body, trying to bring them into normal, but actually you keep them from reaching the heights that they should have been at.
Right.
Am I saying that right or not?
I think so, close enough probably. It's numbing them out. And
numbing, that's a good word, because these drugs will do
so
that.
Much of their job here is to affect other people with their energy, and if you're numbing them out and dulling them down, they can't do their job.
Well, they're called the new kids on the block. They have tremendous intelligence. And they know things. They know the answers to problems. They know a lot of things that the adults don't know. They're the whole new generation. They're called the gift to the world. Well, I've lectured on that a lot, is don't put them on these drugs to, let them develop. And this morning on the Today Show, I was amazed. I said, finally, have they been reading my books, or are they finally figured it out?
Yeah.
Maybe it's time. But they had psychiatrists on there, and what they said? 100 million children have been misdiagnosed with ADHD. I've always said that. How could there be so many? All of a sudden, we got all these kids that there's something wrong with them. 100 million children, that's a lot of children, have been misdiagnosed. Now look at how many of those children have been put on Ritalin, have been suppressed, and have been pushed over to the side. Don't let them develop their potential.
Right.
That's a lot. And the psychiatrist said, anytime there's an increase in anything, you better look at it. She said over the last 20 years, there's been a 500% increase in children being diagnosed with attention deficit. A 500% increase in 20 years. And she said, that's not normal. When you look at that, something doesn't increase all of a sudden in just 20 years to that big of a deal. So there must be something wrong here. And that's when they began looking into it and finding out they've been misdiagnosed. There wasn't anything wrong with these kids.
They're just different. Just different.
But, look at our own kids. When they were little, sure, we had hyperactive kids. You had kids that run around the house, wouldn't calm down, yell and scream, and want to climb the wall. We just said, that's just them. That's their personality. Or they're the same way. Kids are just being kids. We always used to say, go outside and run off some steam. Run around the yard or something. We wouldn't put them on any drugs anyway. But this is what they said on the show. They're coming up with some solutions here. They think that we're sending some of these children to school too early. That you have the 5-year-olds, and they're not really ready to go to school yet. They're not mature enough. And you put them in a class, even in kindergarten, first grade, with these kids that are a little older, and by that time they've kind of calmed down. The little kids don't know yet how to calm down, and they're not used to it. All of a sudden, they're in school. They've been running around and having a ball, being a kid. And all of a sudden, you bring them to school, you put them into a grade, and they're not even ready to start school yet. they are going to be rambunctious because they said they're bored, they're rambunctious, they can't sit still. You know yourself, some of your kids can't sit still that long.
Well, that's not the child's way.
Well, the kid wants to be up and going all the time.
They have perpetual energy. No, that's not the way of a child. So.
Talk about the Energizer Bunny.
Absolutely.
And they said it's impossible for them to just sit still that long. If you look at it that way, natural. They said recess is the best time for them. They look forward to recess when they can go out and run around and burn off the energy. So they think maybe they shouldn't be allowed, the really young ones shouldn't be allowed to go to school that young until you can see they're
really...
Well,
they kept doing it younger and younger and younger. I think some schools, they're starting them at 2 and things. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's preschool and preschool, and, I mean, that's really... just a convenience thing, you know. It's just okay. Rather than daycare, they're going to school, and it probably is too much structure.
Yeah.
You know, they're not being able to just be
let
free.
Let the kid
you know?
be a kid. That's what they said. That's one of the things they think we're doing wrong, and they're also noticing, and I think you notice the same thing, is that the teachers have too many children in the class. Mm-hmm. It's not their fault. They're overworked. They're stressed out. They've got to make all these kids behave. And say you got a good sized class, and you got one kid in the class who's rambunctious. He wants to run around. He's bored, which is normal for that kid. Mm-hmm. So the only solution they have is, well, let's send a note home to the parents and put them on Ritalin.
Right.
That's what I've heard. The doctors don't diagnose it. The teachers do.
Right.
And they'll say, you got to take this kid to the doctor and put him on a medication. And it's for the convenience of the teachers. And I can understand the teachers. They're overworked, too. There's too many kids in the class. But you got to think of the kid, too. So some of the advice that they were giving on the Today Show, they said, go to the school and just sit in on the class and watch and see what happens. Usually they'll let you do it. Mm-hmm. And see if the teacher is overworked, if she has too many kids and they're acting up and she can't handle it. Then they said if that's the case, then go to the principal, the school board, talk to them and say, we think you should hire an aide to help in that class. And they said the school has to do that. They have to hire an aide to help the teacher if they think there's a problem. I don't think it comes back on, well, you're not doing your job, so we're just going to, push you out. It's not that. You need help. And so they said they will give them an aide. If they won't do that, they say ask if your child can be put into another class where there isn't as much pressure and isn't as much going on like that. And I think this was a really good show, and I was so surprised. Finally, they're admitting what I've been saying all along. It goes back to the same stuff about the having epidemics of obesity, epidemics of diabetes, epidemics of autism.
Well, all of this will come to light as time keeps going. I mean, because it is time for us to understand these things and know that we're not victims here, you know. We are in charge, and we are doing all of this. So,
and I've had people on my show who have said that the reasons why all these things are happening. But I think that was really good that Today's Show finally admitted that 100 million children misdiagnosed and put on Ritalin and try to push them aside. They're different. And it does affect their brain after a while. There's no way it can't. But their solutions, the ones I work with, said, give the child a challenge, something to do that will occupy its mind, something that's different, that the other kids are working on and they're bored, they need something else. They said, give them a challenge. Even if you just give them something to tear apart and put back together again, it's something to keep them occupied. Or the older children, give them a thesis, another report to go and research and write about. These are the things you need to do because it'll keep the kid's mind occupied. And
you might be really surprised with what they come up with because they're very creative.
Oh, yes.
You know? So let them create. Give them
instead of being bored.
Mm-hmm.
Because I did see a show a couple of years ago on Nova. Some of these kids have graduated from college at only 10 years old. And many of these kids have already founded their own companies and organizations. And it's interesting that the organizations they are founding have to do with helping the children of the world. They have a lot of potential if we just don't dampen them down. So anyway, I thought that was very important that they gave that. I'm glad I got to see it. I said, wow. I've been saying it all along. Maybe they've been reading my books. Who knows?
Who knows? Who knows?
Okay, well, we're coming to the top of the hour again now, and it said it's just flown by.
Absolutely.
We had no idea what we were going to talk about when we started out.
Yeah, we're just talkaholics, so what?
There's so many things we're involved with. Anyway, if you want any information about the classes we're going to be doing in England and France, you can check on our website, www.ozarkmountain, and that's abbreviated, OZARKMT.com, or if you're in Europe, it's OZARKMT.com, or you can just type in my name.
Right.
Dolores Cannon.com. Any spelling of it, and it will come up, and you'll have more information about the two classes, the one in England and the one in...
Yeah, there'll be a button that says hypnosis classes, I think.
Yeah, it's the schedule part. All right. Anyway, we're home for a little while, and then we're going to be off again. So we'll talk to you again next week. So thanks for listening tonight. And good night, everybody.
Good night. Choose a wonderful reality.
If you enjoyed the show, check out more of our other videos and be sure to subscribe and click the like button. Thank you for listening to the Metaphysical Hour with Dolores Cannon.